Welcome back to the grim darkness of the 41st Millennium. I am Inquisitor Caveat Ventus, keeper of the Inquisition's Black Library, and this is my report on the Valentyne Heresy, an actual play podcast set in the Genesys adaptation of Warhammer 40,000's Dark Heresy RPG. This report features Game Master Tom McGee, Ryan LaPlante as Inquisitor Lucius Valentyne, Laura Elizabeth as Lyric, and Tyler Hewitt as Alto. My report shows that the Inquisitorial Band landed on the Death World of Tren. Lyric was concerned about her injured leg. Valentyne reprogrammed Eugene in accordance with their deal, and Alto saved Akri from going down with the ship. What awaits Valentyne's band as they set off into a xenos-infested theme park? Find out next in this episode of the Valentyne Heresy.
From an environmental report about Tren. If that asteroid hits, it's fucked. End of report. Truly, some environmental reports are true. This one was. Although you, on ground level, certainly will never see where the asteroid impact altered the fate of Tren, you're certainly feeling the consequences, quite literally, as you begin to trudge your way into the frozen jungle. I'd like you all to please roll me a survival check.
Oh, wonderful.
So that is survival plus cunning. Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah. One day I'll print things, but I need the world to open first. So, okay. First step, I'm going to cure coronavirus. Then I'm going to print the Heresy book. And it's going to be, because the one I printed is out of date. Okay. Yeah. So this is going to be, you're pretty early. Like, this is, you literally just, you've been walking for kind of an hour now. So we're going to call this a two purple check.
Okay. We all had 2 for our void suits, 2 blue.
Yep.
Thanks,
and
Ryan.
Yeah, this is just generally, I mean, we hearty Canadian folk will know this, but you've bundled up to go skiing or snowboarding and or skating on the Rideau Canal, and you're like, I think I dressed warmly enough. How warmly did you actually dress?
Now we all roll to see how Canadian we are.
Yep.
3 successes.
Confident that this will go my way. No, let's roll anyway. We made it, folks. 3 successes, 1 advantage.
Right.
I have 1 success, but 5 advantage.
Hey.
Okay. So Ryan, I think we're gonna say I'm gonna let you use your advantage as a hold. This is a system that does exist in Genesys, but just to clarify, it's actually truer of things like Blades in the Dark or any of the Powered by the Apocalypse systems, a trophy. So hold is basically a dice you can take moving forward. Normally boost dice tend to be given in the situation. Like, you know, if it's combat, it'd be like, oh, I got 2 advantage. Okay, so I want to give Laura 2 boost dice. Given that we're doing a survival scenario, we'll say you have 5 holds that you can use. So basically 5 boost that you can just kind of hand around. And Tyler, you will have 1 from your advantage.
For flavor purposes, let's say I've got those because the Scholar Progenium world that I grew up on was a winter world.
Sure, that makes sense. Also, I think you've had to, I like that. Also, you've had to survive in worse conditions with less. So realizing, I know, like, this is just a personal Tom bias, but like when I realized my boots aren't going to leak, I'm like, fuck yeah, winter, I got you.
So let's say it was an asteroid, because then I can deal with cold and other things. That's fun.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
And I think Lyric's successes are more that she is extremely wary of everything, because this is such a foreign environment to her that she's just like she's being careful.
Yep. Well, I mean, you're injured and you're in a foreign environment, but I think that makes sense.
And also successes come from Lyric looking out for him, being like,
Yes.
Put on another shirt. That's not enough layers.
Yes.
Don't, like, we're not going anywhere until you put on another
You will never regret bringing an extra layer. You will regret not bringing enough.
It's just grumpy listening to sibling.
Yeah. Alto like T-posing because he's like so
Yeah.
so many layers.
I was gonna say Alto like
He's a Robert Munch character.
yeah, he just like looks at the mittens pinned to his sleeves and is like it's like one pin to the mechano arm. Great. Okay. So yeah. So generally as a party, you're doing quite well then. As you begin to kind of trudge forward. So I assume you're on the lookout for any mechanical stuff you can salvage. Right now you haven't found much until you reach the rim of the dome. So this is a massive, massive concrete. Think probably about I don't know, maybe a story tall. Sort of massive concrete rim. You can see a jagged edge of glass from where the dome would have stood. Again, same construction as the one you're familiar with, same idea as the one you're familiar with from back home. But whereas yours was kind of built for looks, this one seemed to have been built. You can see kind of like solar coating on the dome panels, and where yours was meant to keep radiation out, this one seems to kind of be to keep heat in. So you're able to fairly easily find a sort of a service ladder that'll get you up to the top. There are no doors that you can see. Kind of like this thing does stretch out kind of massively in either direction. As I said, your dome was big. This one's bigger. But you're able to kind of climb that. The glass is dangerous, but easy enough to climb over. I think, taking the appropriate amount of time and care. I'm not going to make you roll because you're not in any hurry. On the other side, you can see that the concrete on this side has been painted in jungle camo. To kind of make it theoretically disappear. You kind of notice this as your footsteps kind of disturb the powder. But done in very much the way that like a zoo or a park would, where it's like, it's fine, but Lyric, you looking at this is not sufficient camo for anyone really. And with that, you kind of climb down the other side and in. Valentyne, can you please roll me? 1 second. Just need to minimize my zoom here so I can actually look at the book. Waka. Can you please roll for me a
perception?
Yeah, I'd say perception's probably the right call for this. Actually, so it certainly isn't lore. Okay. Let's go with perception.
Cool. What's my difficulty?
3, please.
Alrighty, I'll use one of my holds for this.
Okay.
I'll track those, Tom, so you don't have to worry about it.
That'd be great. I should point out this is an appropriate one for this. I didn't finish my thought earlier, so this is on me. Do please consider these holds for things involving
the environment.
An action involving the environment of some sort. That can still be combat checks, but like, if it's I'm rolling to remember something about like chaos. Like, nah.
No, snow related. I get it and I like it.
Frostelicus, the demon of frost. I remember.
He hated when he was on the asteroid with me as a boy.
He would always tell me chaos things when we were cold. That's how I remembered them.
Alrighty. That is 1 success and 4 advantage.
Okay, cool. So with that roll, you kind of quickly dust some of the snow off this interior wall, and you kind of do this along the way. Maybe Alto and Lyric help until you find a stenciled number and signifier. So it doesn't exactly sync up with anything that's on the map because the map is again built for public consumption, not like staff consumption. But you think you're able to rough out the zone you're in. So you are in the northeast quadrant. which is naturally diametrically opposed from the starport, which is in sort of the far west.
Okay.
But it at least gives you some sense. So the visitor center is dead center in inside the sort of former dome. You can see between here and there is what seems to be marked as essentially like a maintenance shed. So where they would keep a lot of the things required, essentially like a very fancy gardener's thing.
Okay.
So based on roughly where you think you are, it's with a little bit of searching, you could likely find your way there. Beyond that, there seem to be like, there's a lot of words you just don't understand. You see terms like callops, and lantos, and like a few other things with kind of that seem to almost be zoned out. If you were to guess based on just kind of your knowledge of what this thing was intended for, it's likely the spaces where these things were kept. So if there was like a species that was, I've been playing a lot of Far Cry, so you'll have to forgive the sort of blunt version of this, but there's kind of like a little picture of like a creature head and then the name and a general zone where you are likely to find that creature.
Yeah, I think he'd be roughly familiar with the idea of like a zoo or an ecological preserve. Like nothing crazy, but
for sure,
the vague idea.
And what you can tell from this is it seems as though this really was meant to be a free range thing. Like it's obviously I'm using Jurassic Park as a bit of an inspiration for this, but it's not like, here is the paddock where the T-Rex lives. Here is where this thing is. It's more like an African lion safari where it's like, oh, well, like this kind of creature makes its habitat here. Like this is kind of the swamp area, and you're most like if we're using modern terms, you're likely to see a crocodile here because there's a swamp, and that's where the crocodile would be. But over here is like a plains area, so that's where you'll see a lion.
Cool. Alrighty, so I think he turned to the other and say, all right, so it looks like we have a collection of creatures. I don't know what any of them are, nor whether or not they're dangerous. So everyone keep your arms ready. And by arms, I mean weapons. I have, however, found what appears to be a maintenance shed. So we should probably head there. They may have a vehicle we could commandeer or other tools that could be useful. Any thoughts or objections?
Makes sense. Let's go.
Sounds good to me.
All righty. This is excellent. It's a pleasure having companions.
Okay, so I'm inclined to make this another survival check, just because I feel like tracking and kind of wilderness stuff is likely that. That said, because this isn't an environmental check, you can choose who is kind of taking lead on finding this maintenance shed.
Not me.
I don't think Aldo would
I'm like
enthusiastically volunteer either.
Away we are, friends. I'll lead. So it'll be me,
Aldo.
Tom.
Great.
Aldo, by the way, is a kind of mid-tier fancy shoe brand. My character's name is Alto, and I'm going to need to remember that.
I was letting it slide because I just thought it was interference, but
Cool. Tom,
yeah.
I don't know if this would apply in this environment, but using an auspex adds... Oh, no, this is survival. Forget it. No, I'm good. All right. So...
What's
What's
give
our difficulty, Tom?
I'm going to say a difficulty of 3. I will give you a boost for the Auspics. I think that does make sense in this situation. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, it traditionally adds to perception, so if I'm perceiving where I'm going, that would make sense. I will also add another one of my holds to this, because I think that feels like a reasonable check to do so with. All right, let's see what happens. 1 advantage.
Okay. So again, based on just how vague this is, also we joked a bit. It might have been off air about like how bad maps are in terms of like America's the size of Africa. It's like that's not how that works at all. And unfortunately, you're kind of getting the same vibe here, whereas this space is so vast that like you know the general direction you're going is right, but where this actual thing is, not so much. With your 1 point of advantage, though, I will say that as you're making your way kind of using your auspice as best you can to even just try and pick up a ping of like permacrete or anything else that has just been dumped here. You actually pick up a heat signature. It's faint, but it is nearby.
Interesting. And I would turn to the others and say, do you happen to have microbeads? It'd be terribly convenient if you did.
Yeah.
Of course.
Wonderful. We should sync those. Right now would be excellent. So I think we'll just go about building our own little network. And then he'll talk into his microbead rather than yelling over whatever snow or wind is blowing. And just say, okay, friends, so I found a heat signature, which is as exciting as it is possibly troubling. So I'm thinking perhaps we should go look for it and see what happens.
Where's the heat signature?
Well, it seems to be over that way. And I'll just point in the direction that it's in.
Well,
Still vaguely towards the visitor center at the center, so still
All right.
along our path.
Look, is there a chance that this could be like a ship that's just like up and running and waiting for us to like climb right in and fly it away? Probably not.
I feel like you asked a question and then answered it. What was your intention? Keep finishing the thought.
Yeah, no. Why are we going towards this thing instead of going around it?
Well, many power cells or other buildings could create a heat signature over time. I just don't have any signs of metal, but again, I'm not actually an Auspex expert. They're very expensive, but I have one.
Maybe I could, scout ahead. I mean, if it's heat signature stuff.
Also, you're not scouting ahead.
Oh, okay.
Valentyne is taking the lead.
But he is the stealthiest of us, and he could perhaps interface with the Auspex to get better readings. I have no fault with other people's expertise being harnessed here.
Yeah, I also don't want him to walk into danger first.
Well, I think he would have an Auspex. Here's the thing. Remember when you said, I'll be the best one to talk? And I was like, I think I'm a better talker than you. And then you were shot several times and your leg is broken. If I go first, it does not necessarily mean that we will not all end up in tremendous danger.
All right. Alto, I'm coming with you.
Okay. I was just going to say, Kel's night cloak that she gave me, it hides my thermal presence. So, if it is a person or something like that, maybe they won't see my heat signature. We can see theirs. They can't see
All right,
ours.
fucking fine. You know what? Go ahead. I'm setting up. I've got my rifle out, ready to shoot anything.
Right.
Yes,
I'm gonna cover him.
We've all got microbeads. If there's a problem, we are but a shout away. I'm not saying send him kilometers ahead. I'm saying keep him, just within earshot, just out of line of sight. Okay, here's the Auspex, friend. Don't break it. Very expensive.
Ryan, can you help me visualize what Auspex are?
Yeah, so if you picture, it's kind of like a wand kind of thing in your hand with like a little display over the top. So like a stick in your hand, and then it's got a little,
I'm sorry,
almost like a half circle style thing with little sci-fi like knobs and sensors on the top, so you can just look at the screen. So it's something you could probably plug into the bottom of and use in that way. Okay.
Thank you. I had forgotten that we actually did cover this in an earlier episode.
Oh, yeah, no worries.
Okay, so I've got the Auspex, so I see the signature up ahead. I will completely put my hood up and fasten up my night cloak, which again is sort of like a half cloak, half poncho, because it does sort of like cover my full profile. And because it was Kel's, I also kind of like disappear into it a bit. Like it's not sized to me.
You built an adult Dementor?
Basically, yeah. Wearing it, basically it just reflects all of my body heat back inward.
Nice.
So I'm
Very
not
cool.
throwing any body heat. So it gives me +2 to stealth, and I will try to start like sneaking towards this thing while reading the Auspex.
Great. So go ahead and roll me a stealth check, please.
Okay. Give me 2 seconds to assemble a dice pool.
Yeah, no sweat. Difficulty on this will be... sorry, one moment. Difficulty of 2, please.
Okay. And how many story points do we have on our side for use?
Currently, I think we're actually even, because I used 1, Ryan used 1, and I think that's all we've done. So 3 and 3.
Cool.
I'm going to use 1 to convert one of my 4 greens to a yellow.
Yep, I dig that.
And I'm just going to basically justify that as basically like Alto can feel Lyric like staring at the back of his head, being like, man, if you can't be like let out of her sight, like if you can't prove that like you can do this, then like that leash is just getting tighter kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm actually going to give you 1 setback for that as well,
Okay.
please. So 1 black dice,
Yeah.
because this is so far outside the realm of either of your experience, but in a weird way, this is the perfect time to prove yourself because this is a situation that she also isn't good in.
Yeah.
So if you can like...
Yeah, it's definitely like a desire to help without like I don't want to distance myself from her because, you know, I don't like her or anything like that. But it's also like, you know, I can help. I can do things too.
Yeah.
And Tom, can I use one of my holds to add a boost die for him because the Auspex would be helping?
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, we'll say one blue for the Auspex.
Cool. Okay.
I love the visual of you like hunched over like a spooky ragman monster.
That's yeah.
With like clutching, like you're gonna either tell Scrooge to like mend his ways by pointing at things, but like also that you're like holding a fucking Game Boy, like
Yeah.
Yeah, exterior is approach of death. Interior is kid reading a book under the blankets.
yeah,
Yes.
it's
Yeah. And
very
if you're
funny.
close enough, you can hear him like, "Oh man, if I screw this up, Lyric's gonna kill me." It's like,
Are you're not still rigged to Akri, right?
he's got his Vox now, so no, I wouldn't.
He does. Okay, then
Yeah,
he
yeah.
wouldn't say anything.
Okay.
he knows the gag.
Okay.
He was in the guard. This isn't his first rodeo.
Okay. I'm gonna roll. Ooh, thank you for those boost dice. That is 1 success, 2 advantages.
Ooh, okay, cool. So you make your way through the snow, kind of moving as slow as you can. Luckily for you, the cloak actually kind of like sweeps your footsteps as you go. So
Yeah,
it's there's still tracks that can be followed, but it's not like aggressively like, oh, someone clomped through here. So you make your way forward, kind of feeling the puffs of your breath, like every so often haze the screen of the Auspex. And at one point you move your hand across the screen to wipe it, and there's another dot. And then as you kind of take...
Yeah, I was like, Alto freezes.
Yeah, so you freeze, and you see another dot kind of appear from the edge of the screen. And then suddenly you are knocked to the ground. Can you please roll me a cool check?
Cool. Yeah, let me clear that.
So this is a mechanic we haven't fucked with at all yet because I hadn't read it yet. But it's definitely one we're going to play with that's a holdover from Dark Heresy that's fairly important, which is fear and trauma. So basically when spooky things happen, similar to Mythos Mysteries, it can really bend your brain. And given that the horrors of the 40K universe are vast and terrifying, every so often you'll be asked to roll a fear check. And fear is just a pure cool check against a difficulty I'll tell you based on how traumatic the event is.
Okay.
If you fail, you become afraid, which means you'll be adding setback dice to rolls against whatever the thing is. If it gets too bad, you might suffer trauma, which means that...
I do see the mental trauma section.
Say, Tom, here's a weird question then. What is discipline versus cool?
Glad you asked, Ryan. In the Genesys book, discipline is used for fear checks, but discipline is much more. This is literally a thing I read earlier, and I was like, "This is weird gameplay, but I like it." Discipline in Dark Heresy is usually used against psyker powers. It's an incredibly powerful stat. However, when the game designers were looking at it, they realized that if discipline was also used for fear, and everyone was already hardening themselves against psykers, it would just mean that everyone's an invincible fear monster. So they split the stat down the middle. So I think the way we'll play it is if it seems like a situation where discipline would in fact be the solution, we'll go with that. But what I like about cool is if you're surprised, I feel like it's cool.
Yeah. Cool seems reactionary. Discipline feels
exactly
like stealing yourself.
Yeah, and I'm happy to make the argument for, I mean, Ryan, I think this only really would apply to you, but if there's like a horror of the warp or something that as an Inquisitor you've steeled your mind to, I'd be inclined to say that usually discipline would be the right call.
Okay,
Because
so like trained to deal with it, discipline, dealing with your startled reaction, cool.
Exactly. Like I just hit the part in the Eisenhorn book where they like do the auto augur business, and like they're like, oh shit, this one's full of nightmares and horrors, and neither he nor the augur are like, we've been trained for this. They're both just like, oh god, sad, and then they need to tap out. So I also don't want to make you immune to having panic reactions that are based on cool. But we'll take it on a case-by-case basis.
Cool.
Similarly, if, for example, someone tried to mind hack Alto, that might actually be a discipline check. Because it's like, oh, like, okay, like we're fighting, like it's surprising, it's unpleasant, but I'm used to this. Similarly, if Lyric was attacked in a bar fight, even if it was a surprise, I don't really buy... Well, I mean, actually, that might be cool for you just because that's a stat that I think probably is more... So you know what I mean. But as with anything in this game, let's make sure that we're trying to find the right one each time. But the base one we're going to use is cool.
Okay, sounds good.
And I will say it might change over time. For instance, if we were spending a huge arc where we were on a Tyranid hive world, the odds of you being constantly shocked by Tyranids, shocked for a bit, and then like they're Tyranids. I get it. And if you pass these cool checks on fear well enough, you can also become numb to certain things. So then you don't need to check against them anymore.
Cool.
Because you're like, I mean, all right, you've seen one face melt, you've seen them all. Like it's bad, but I know it. So with all that in mind, Alto, go ahead and roll.
So I do have my cool stats for dice. I don't have any purple dice yet.
Yeah, that's on me. This is going to be I'm going to say a 2.
Okay.
Things like this I think are very scary to you, but you are also having spent a lot of time watching Ghostbusters and other things where people are like actively waiting to be scared, like they're at Screamers at Canada's Wonderland or some shit.
Yeah.
Because you were like actively tense, I feel like it actually reduces it because it's like a jump scare in a movie. You still get the shock of it, but you don't. It's not so out of the blue that you completely.
You don't have to wait for it anymore. It's relieving.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
You mean he doesn't like shriek like I do
We're gonna
in
find
movie
out.
theaters
I
when I'm
might.
startled?
He
Wait for it.
entirely might.
All right, I'm gonna roll. Yeah. That's kind of wild. 5 advantages, 2 failures.
So, Lyric, what you see is a form drop out of a tree. And it is if you kind of take a tiger's body and then just add an extra pair of arms, so sort of a 6-footed,
Nope.
Yep,
Nope.
creature with a tail that ends in kind of a split with 2 almost, they're kind of like spade-shaped, almost like fish fins, but made kind of almost of a feather material, and it drops on Alto, and you've got your rifle up, and you see the creature's lower jaw split, and then the quite unfortunate jaw on top of its head splits. And you see it kind of do that usually horror movie in the dark monster thing where, you know, you see the saliva dripping and it kind of lets out like a deep guttural kind of growl, and a horrible thing happens for you. You realize that this creature is not aware that it has landed on something. It just dropped out of the tree. And because it heard something, but it is not aware that it's on Alto until he shrieks.
I'll give you one of those if you like.
By all means. And with that, roll for initiative.
This episode of the Valentyne Heresy features Ryan LaPlante at the Ryan LaPlante on Twitter as Inquisitor Lucius Valentyne, Tyler Hewitt at Tyler_Hewitt on Twitter as Alto, Laura Elizabeth at EL Hamstring on Twitter as Lyric, and our Game Master Tom McGee at McGeeTD on Twitter. This episode was edited by Ryan LaPlante, and the Valentyne Heresy's show logo was created by Decapitated Markers at Decapitated Marker on Twitter. That's MRKR. Our theme song is The Hordes by Megan McDuffie, and our ads use the tracks No Control and Chiefs by Jazzar, JAHZZAR, provided by freemusicarchive.org. When it comes to Dum Dums and Dice, you can visit our website at dumdumdice.com. Our Twitter and Instagram are at dumdumdice, and on Facebook at facebook.com/dumdumdice. We have merchandise available at redbubble.com/people/dumdumdice, and most importantly, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/dumdumdice. That's DUMBDICE. Ave Imperator, and death to all the heretics. Dum Dums and Dice has to give a special thank you to the supreme beings of our Patreon at this time: Christian Menicola, Long, the Half-Blind Prophet, James Cuellar, DM Rob, Christopher Little, Olin Anderson, Sue One, Devin Boyce, George Dolby, One True Artistry, Orion Birchfield, Anthony Griffin, and Jill and Noel LaPlante. If you want your name to be added to this list, you can join our Patreon too at patreon.com/dumdumdice. Thanks to them, and a little bit of thanks to you.